G'day, you're listening to the Virtual Staff Room, and this is episode 30, the Whiteboard Conundrum. Hello again, my name is Chris Betcher. Thank you for joining us here on the Virtual Staff Room. And in today's episode, we are having an interesting discussion about interactive whiteboards, always a controversial topic and always one of those topics that gets both sides of the educational fence talking about whether they're a good thing or a bad thing. This episode was actually supposed to be originally, the plan was to have it in the form of a debate, and I had a few people who were very pro interactive whiteboards and a few people very negative interactive whiteboards. Unfortunately, at the last minute, most of the people on the opposing side, the negative side, were unable to make it. And so we decided rather than can the whole thing, let's record it anyway, and we can try and bring up some of those issues and talk about them. And I think we did a reasonable job of that. So in today's episode, we're joined by a fairly international cast of teachers. We've got Rob Newberry, a Canadian teacher teaching in Thailand, James Hollis from just outside Chicago in Illinois, USA, Danny Nicholson from the UK, and from Australia, Martin Levins from the Armidale School, and Stuart Walsh, who teaches out in country New South Wales in a little town called Dubbo. So a pretty interesting mix of opinions and perspectives for this episode. Of course, it would be a shame for the conversation to end here, so I'd encourage you, after you've heard this episode, to head on over to the blog at www.virtualstaffroom.net and leave some comments there in the comment thread, because I don't think this conversation finishes here. There's probably a lot more that can be said, and I'm sure many of you have opinions that you'd like to share about whiteboards and whether they're good, bad, or ugly. So enjoy the episode. Well, welcome to another episode of the Virtual Staff Room podcast, and tonight we're going to be talking about interactive whiteboards. And in fact, this was going to be in the form of a debate, but you know how things go. Things happen, and unfortunately some of the negative side of the team couldn't show up tonight. So we will try and cover some of that stuff anyway and talk about the pros and cons of whiteboards and maybe just a little bit about this sometimes contentious technology. So we've got some great guests tonight, and I'll just start at the top of the list here. Martin Levins, just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, g'day, thanks, mate. I'm a teacher, although I think I'm actually going to change my name. I think my title, I think I'm going to change it to student after the last couple of days. I've been at a conference with a whole bunch of really, really talented teachers. So I think I need to learn stuff again. I'm a K-12 teacher, have been for yonks and yonks and yonks and yonks. Really interested in technology, started out as a science teacher, currently run the IT department at the Armidale School in northern New South Wales, and I write the monthly education column for Australian Macworld.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Rob, tell us about you.
My name is Rob Newberry. I'm a Canadian teacher living in Bangkok and teaching at an international school. It's called Rumrudi, and I teach grade 3, 4, 5 technology. I have about just over 200 students in the elementary section, and I also teach grade 6 digital photography.
Excellent. Well done. Danny Nicholson from the UK.
Hi, my name's Danny Nicholson. I used to be a science teacher, secondary science teacher, but for the last 5 or 6 years I've been completely freelance and involved in lots of training, and in the main interactive whiteboard training, but other tech as well. So I travel around and go in schools and teach teachers how to use whiteboards and other bits and pieces.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. And I have to say, Danny, I stumbled across your blog, the Whiteboard blog, a while back, and there's tons of good stuff on there. It's a good resource. And then,
I forgot to plug the blog. So.
We will plug all of those things. And then moving across the other side of the world to James Hollis in Chicago.
Yes, good morning to everybody. It's a little after 6 a.m. here. I'm actually in Aurora, Illinois, which is about 40 miles west of Chicago. And kind of like Danny, I was a teacher for a while. Actually, I'm still a certified math teacher, but I've moved into consulting teachers, primarily now full-time in helping teachers learn how to use software for the Smartboard Interactive Whiteboard. And I will plug my blog, Danny. It's Teachers Love Smartboards. And I also do professional development for the online Smartboard training site called Teacher Online Training.
Excellent. So we've got a fair bit of expertise in the room. Rob, you mentioned you use these things quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I've used them when I was in Canada. I used them quite a bit, and I ended up doing some training for teachers on how to use them. And then when I came to Bangkok, I think before I came to Bangkok, I must have had I don't know, hundreds, maybe 600 or 700 pages of Smartboard, like just sort of slides and pages done. And when I came here to the school, they don't have any Smartboards, so. So that's kind of where things are at right now. But I'm a real big advocate for them. I think they're great technology.
Cool. Excellent. Well, look, guys, I'm just going to throw it up with an opening question to anyone who wants to answer it, really. And I'm going to steal a line that I got from Ben Hazard from the Smartboard Lessons podcast when we spoke a while back. And he said, is there such a thing as an interactive whiteboard pedagogy? So I'm going to throw that open to you and just get your thoughts on it. First person in gets it.
Everyone's being very quiet, aren't they? And now, of course, everyone will speak together. I'll kick off, Chris.
Okay.
And I don't think there is an interactive whiteboard pedagogy. And in fact, I don't think that there is a computer pedagogy or a left-handed librarian on Tuesday pedagogy. I think that that concentrates the philosophy on the particular tool or environment that you are using at that particular time. So I'm interested to see what other people think. What about yourself, Rob?
I'm not sure about what I would go as far as to say pedagogy, but I think that for me, and the way that I think how it's worked the best is to use it as a teaching tool for the teacher and not a learning tool or a learning sort of facilitator for students. And I know that kind of sounds like maybe a bit of a contradiction, but I'm not a big guy to say, let's get the students up here and let's get them up on the board and touching the board and things like that. I feel like it really takes away from the structure of the lesson. I think that there are definitely some key ways that you can use them in the classroom. But I'm not, as I said, I'm not sure if I would go as far as to say pedagogy.
Gee, I'm glad to hear you say that, Rob, because I feel like a bit of a heretic sometimes. In fact, I gave a talk at a conference in New Zealand earlier this year called Teaching is Not a Dirty Word, because it's almost like it's become this notion that the true test of whether an interactive whiteboard is being used well is whether the kids are using it or not. And maybe I'm a heretic, but I just don't see that. I just don't see that that's the measuring stick by which you should say they're successful or not successful. So it's interesting that you should.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, no, I really don't. I really have. I think I get into some trouble the same way. Some people look at me and they say, well, you're going to spend how many thousands of dollars to bring this technology in the classroom, and, are your students using it? And what I would do is I would have a recess club where every day I would pick 3 students out of a hat who hadn't been up to the board yet and bring them in at recess for 15, 20 minutes, and they were completely free to play some games on it, or they could use Google Earth on it, and they got it out of their system that way. But how I used it was really, it was for me. It was technology that I needed in teaching to really engage my students, which was the number one reason why I used it. Was the level of engagement was unbelievable. And then afterwards to really try to create some visually meaningful lessons, especially in mathematics. That's where I found I used it the most.
Right.
I'd like to get everybody using the board where we can, but it doesn't have to just be like let's just get the kids up all the time to use it. You can do a lot of good stuff with a wireless mouse, a wireless keyboard, and using the interactive whiteboard at the front. Yep. I kind of believe that. The most important bit is the projector. I think the projector changes the way teachers can use the tech. And a couple of years ago, schools didn't have the projectors in, were using IT in a certain way. The projectors made it a lot different, and how they can actually use their window on the world, and get really good quality images and using the internet and stuff like that. I have found that the boards will be used depending on how the teacher's teaching style, and some will just continue to use it as their whiteboard, stand at the front and talk. Whereas others that start to actually engage the students may not be getting the kids up. It could be pass the mouse around and say, right, interact with it that way. But at least there is some kind of two-way flow of information going back and forth, rather than I'm standing here, I'm the guy on the stage. What do you think of this, that, and the other? Yeah. Whereas if you just had a projection, not the board, the kids are looking at the front of the board, the teacher's to the side of the class, and you've got a very disjointed way of doing things. Whereas with the whiteboard, you could at least stand at the front. And so, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
You're actually back at the front presenting.
James, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I'd like to kind of take the other side of the argument here. I work with a gentleman by the name of Harvey Elmerode, and he's actually working with teachers, preparing them for the classroom. And not so much that there's a pedagogy for interactive whiteboards, but what Danny just said is there are a lot of different ways. I think Rob just said this too. There are a lot of different ways to use a smartboard, and you do get people still with interactive whiteboard in front of the classroom, and they're up there being the sage on the stage,
yep.
And they really don't know how to incorporate other teaching strategies to start making the classroom student centered, which I think is kind of the direction that I want to take all instruction. And the interactive whiteboard is just a tool to do that. But I think there is a collection of tools that help teachers do that. And I think they really need to be informed and educated on strategies for using these tools. So I kind of take the other end of the argument, not so much just with interactive whiteboards, but kind of with the new collection of technologies that allow teachers to finally use technology in a meaningful way that can make a tremendous difference in the classroom. So, technology in the classroom, they shouldn't walk into a classroom and notice a smart board or other type of interactive whiteboard. Technology needs to be ubiquitous throughout the classroom in the school. And that's kind of the direction we need to head. Interactive whiteboards are just making such a tremendous impact just because, in my opinion, they're one of the first tools that allow teachers to be in control of a certain type of technology that does and can make a difference in the classroom.
Now, all the naysayers would jump on what you just said and go, it's not all about putting teachers back in control. It's about actually putting the students in control. But I don't know.
I didn't mean control of. I meant in control of. Here, the biggest problem I have, and this is kind of what I meant by that, computers. When computers were introduced, they were, kids, you won't even need to teach anymore.
Yeah.
But teachers never felt like they could use the technology, and rightfully so. It was a difficult tool to figure out how to use it in the classroom. Interactive whiteboards are different, though. They're one of the first pieces of technologies that teachers feel in control of. That's what I mean about the control factor. Right. They're not afraid of the interactive whiteboard like they were the computer. I didn't mean they need to take control of the classroom, but they can be in control of that technology.
One of the things that keeps coming up in a lot of research is this idea of the whiteboard as a Trojan horse, and getting technology embedded into learning where it hasn't actually always been very successful in the past using other technologies. Like, we've been trying to get teachers to adopt technology and to use computers and stuff for 20 years now, and by and large it's been pretty dismally a failure. But it seems that the whiteboards have almost been like this Trojan horse, that once they get their whiteboard and they start playing with it and they start using it a little bit, it's like, to do that, maybe I need to learn how to put a picture in something, and maybe I need to learn how to edit that picture, but now maybe I need to learn how to make a piece of video to put in. And suddenly they're bringing in all these external skills that are almost like seamlessly sneaking in rather than being explicitly learned, if that makes sense.
I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, one of the things I found when I was teaching was the IT was in a room down the corridor. The computers were all down there, and if I wanted to do anything with the kids that used IT, it was get into the classroom right now. We're going down to the suite. All the faffing around, taking coats off, blah, 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 you end up with the feeling that your whole lesson has to then be on the computer. So you're 45 minutes of doing the same task all the way through, and then you traipse back to the classroom to finish off, and off you go. Whereas now, where you have the interactive whiteboard at the front, you can do a 5-minute video that just sets the lesson off, and you may not use it again for a while, and then something as part of a plenary, and you can really use it as just another tool in your box, rather than I've got to plan for a specific IT lesson where I'm doing science, I want to show a video and then do some experiments and then do something else. And it just drops in amongst your lesson then. It's much easier to
Danny,
use.
would Sorry, Danny Martin. Would that mean that you see the preponderant use of these things in... Well, I've got two questions, I suppose. One is that I inferred from an earlier statement by someone, I apologise, I can't remember who it is, that this is essentially a didactic tool. And secondly, are you suggesting that it's the fact that you have to walk off to a different area? In other words, if you had truly ubiquitous digital technologies where every student had access to whatever device that they needed, would you still feel the need for... would you still feel the same way that you just enunciated?
I think... this is from my view of teaching was a few years ago and left the classroom. And now obviously there is IT coming into the classroom more, so using it with handheld computers. I think the netbook and I have schools now that are using iPod touches in different ways as well. If the tech can come into the classroom, even better as well. We were doing some stuff with Pocket PCs a while back for data logging and stuff like that. But I still like the whiteboard as being part of a tool of stuff. And yeah, it could be the machines come into the classroom as well. You've got your whiteboard, you've got your projector. It does make the ICT more accessible. I think a lot of teachers had excuses that I can't do IT because ... and it was always some other thing that got in the way. And I think having a whiteboard and stuff all set up at the front of their classroom made it easier for them to actually use it. But they didn't have so much of an excuse then. The problem they then have is, well, I don't know how to use it. The excuse then is we need to train them to show them how to get the best use from it.
Yeah, but what you've described is a projector and a screen. It's not an interactive whiteboard. And I'm interested in teasing out that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I said at the start.
Sorry.
Oh, go Rob.
Sorry, I was just going to say something about what it makes sort of the difference between what the difference is between a screen and the sort of the smartboard sort of aspect of it is that I use the smart board. So I was using Notebook. And I find Notebook to be a really great tool, actually. I think it's a really fantastic... the students really like using it. I really like using it. And what happens, though, is that I think it takes a lot longer to set up lessons for the smartboards than it definitely does than just the projector and the screen. Because the projector and the screen is just really one mouse click kind of thing, whereas to make something visually meaningful, especially using Notebook, I mean, a lot of teachers would complain. They would say that's their biggest complaint about first getting into smartboards was that it upped their planning time by about 40%.
I got to say, when I'll just jump in here for a sec, guys. When I first saw interactive whiteboards, I got invited to go to a school in southwest Sydney where this particular school had put them in every classroom, and I toured around the facility on this, big showcase day where they were showing everybody what they were doing, and all I saw was projectors being the magic. I didn't see anyone using the boards in any way that was beyond what I'd been doing for years with a projector. And I totally got it. Like, I understand where Martin's coming from and where so many other people come from when they look at this and they go, the board's really not doing anything, it's all the projector. Now, I've kind of changed my mind, and I'm not going to sort of talk about it just yet. I might come back to it and see what you guys think. But how do you move the magic from not just the projector to being the entire projector, board, whiteboard, the whole environment that you have there because of the board? How is it different to a projector?
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Well, I think there's something really cool about them, and I think that's hard. It's a thing that's kind of hard to put your finger on. Well, that's actually kind of funny the way I said it, but to put the finger on it and to have and actually have the touch aspect to it. I think that's what makes it really different. That's why. Yeah, it's fun to pass the mouse around in class, and all those things are great. And it'd even be better if it was 1-to-1 or if you had a computer on every desk. And those are really great things. But there's something really cool about going up to the board and manipulating things tactilely and seeing them react visually. And I mean that's why movies like Minority Report and all those movies where they started using this kind of interactive touch thing. It means something, and I think that it means something to people. I think that it's that connection, that human connection to it. I mean, without sounding too much like I just got back from a Grateful Dead concert, I think that human interaction with it, I think that really has a lot of meaning. And I think that the way it goes, I think that students, that is what really is engaging, but too. Yeah. In a big way.
Yeah, that was actually what hooked me, Rob, is when we first got a board and played with it, and I had it on loan for a month, and then when I gave it back, I just felt naked. And I had still had the projector. That wasn't the thing. It was that being able to point and touch and have eye contact and observe the room and sort of interact not one-on-one, but one-on-many with the kids is totally different to sitting behind a terminal wiggling a mouse around and saying, look up here, and trying to get people's attention by wiggling a mouse. That's a totally different thing.
But you made a really interesting point there, Chris. The really interesting point you just made was that you're talking about interaction with the kids. So you're using the board, and I agree with you. I reckon that pointing at something is a very natural human gesticulatory communication. So if you can point at something and as a consequence of pointing it, move something, it is much more powerful than having to find out where the hell a pointer is on a screen and follow that. It's a lot more... it's a lot more... it's like our normal talking. And the reason I'm stumbling over my words here at the moment is because you can't see my hands gesticulating, indicating that I couldn't find them. And I think that makes the point.
No, I can see.
I think it was really interesting. You're talking about interacting with the kids.
Yeah, I think so. And
well, there's a...
Sorry, go on, James.
Well, I know there's a slight delay, and you're both right. It's something that I don't think has been written on a lot of blog posts in what it is. I don't think we know what that touching really is. It's kind of like my iPhone. Danny, welcome to the world of iPhones, by the way. And here's the thing with the iPhone being able to touch it. It is the worst phone in the world. Okay, absolutely. I hate it as a phone, but I like my iPhone better than I like my first car. And you have to then figure out what it is about the iPhone. And from when I put it back into the students, like what we're talking about here, it's the students being connected in an actual physical, meaningful way with the information. They now are a team with the information that's being presented as opposed to being an observer to it. And it doesn't take much to make the students feel like they're part of the information. Touch and drag, going to where they want to go, and everybody watching is a huge deal. And the last point I want to make is when I observe smart boards or interactive whiteboards in the classroom, if the teacher is up doing stuff, and teachers are going to be using the interactive whiteboard and with the students looking, but when students go up there and one student is using it, all the attention from every other student dramatically changes and focuses on that student. The students are a group, and when one is up there, they have a lot more engaged. We use that word too much, but it's really the best word we can use to describe it. The other students are engaged when they see, one of them being the one in control of the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. There's a comment in the chat room here from Teacher NZ. Hello, Michael, over in Hamilton, New Zealand. That he says there's just something about the kids using the boards with their peers that makes it kind of special. So I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to let you know, Michael, we are watching.
I think that's why the smart boards. I think that it's still very new for them. I know they've been in classrooms a long time, and Smart Technologies have put out probably over 2 million boards. I think by now, probably close to 2.5 million or something. But I think we haven't even got to the point where we're really able to explore what it can mean, not just for teachers presenting and for people in the front of the classroom, but I think for students to go up there and engage with the board when it becomes multi-touch, or when they can use it with another person on at the same time. One of the best games I ever found was a Flash game, and it was just a really simple game. It had 100 number squares on the board, and they were all numbers from, I think it was 1 to 9. And then a number would flash on the screen, and you had 10 seconds to find numbers that would add up to that number, and just touch them, and then it would disappear. And then, the object of the game was to try to clear the board. And there was no more fun than that class. And we had no more fun the whole year was when we had 2 students up there trying to solve it together and helping each other out. Or when we had 2 teachers there trying to compete to see who would sort of choke first. Like, it was great, but it hasn't got to that point yet. We haven't got where we can have complex things, complex movement on the whiteboard, and having a lot of multimedia interaction, and getting students to actually work on a project together by dragging things into it or pulling photos out of it and stuff. It's coming. I mean, they have that table there now, but it's still very, very early in development. So I think when the technology comes out, I think we're going to, and as it gets better and better, and it's coming, right? Windows 7 is already multimedia support.
Yep.
So, multi-touch support. So I think it's a lot. I think there's a lot to come. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the catchphrases that I kind of have adopted with the whole whiteboard thing is, you know, it's not about what happens on the board, it's what happens because of what happens on the board. And it just seems to me that there's a lot of measuring of success of interactive whiteboards by how interactive they are, meaning, you know, how you drag things around on the screen and how the kids come up and they move things. But I more and more of the opinion these days that it's not just about the little interactive tools and learning objects and flash games and stuff that you can get happening. It's what happens to the dynamic of the kids because of all that stuff. And even in a classroom, it's because you can pull up a Google map and zoom in on it and move it around and view it from a different angle, that it's the conversations that you can then get started in a classroom with kids about that stuff that is the real power of the technology,
Sure.
not so much what happens on the actual board itself. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I might get your responses.
Right. Well, here's the kind of question, kind of the response to that. It would be, what kind of tool? I mean, to do what you're saying, and I think that how we all think about how we use sort of our most successful sort of uses of it in the classroom, we have to have some pretty, I think that they're kind of defined skills that come from a lot of exposure to it and some fluency with the board. But there has to be some things that the average teacher, they would have to have some set skills on the smartboard and some things that they would have to be able to do. And I mean, I guess what kind of things. Like you can't just sort of throw things up on the screen and say, okay, well, here's the triangle, here's the square, and let's just put them over top of each other and see how they compare. I think that those would get really boring pretty fast.
Yep.
I think the more complex lessons, the ones that comes out of it, what kind of things do teachers really need to know how to do with those? I think that kind of leads out of your question.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with a lot of that. I think the issue I've found with teachers, the boards are often just dropped into a classroom, and so they're not shown how to use them, not shown what they can do with them. And so when people say, "Oh, I've been in this school and all I've seen is the teacher at the front teaching," it's kind of because they don't really know what it can do. Yeah. Therefore, they don't know any better. Therefore, they just teach in the same way they've always taught, just with this new tool I've got, which just happens to show my window screen at the same time. And I think if teachers are given the opportunity to actually see what is possible, and schools that have spent several £1,000s on this spend a couple £100 on a bit of training, might actually get a lot more out of what they pull in. So when people say, I don't think it's really, by the way, buy training here from whiteboardblog.co.uk, I don't think it's the issue sometimes that boards themselves are stopping the training, stopping what's going on in the classroom, but the teachers don't know better. And I think if we show them what it can do, suddenly they start using it differently, and that will make a change in the classroom.
Yeah.
Until that point, they will just keep doing what they've always done. And then we go in saying, they're not using whiteboards, don't make any difference. They would. They just don't know how to. Probably.
Yeah, and it's hard to measure. There's been study after study on how whiteboards make a difference, but there's just so many variables. There's so many variables in everything to do with education that it's hard to know which one thing is actually the thing that makes a difference. I think at the end of the day, the one thing is the quality of the teaching.
There is a lot of research that's gone into that, though, Chris. If you look at the work of John Hattie in New Zealand, who did that meta-study of all of the... He's been doing it now for 20 years, where he's been studying other people's innovations, to use a word that seems to have lost its currency a bit. But he basically... I think it's something in the order of 200 separate educational innovations throughout the world. 200,000 students involved, and looked at what effect it had on a variety of different methods. If you just Google Hattie, Auckland University, you'll get to his homepage and you can download the relevant bits of business. It's Hattie, by the way. And he shows that a lot of the things which we have been faddish over the past 30, 40 years really don't have a great deal of effect at all. The thing that has the biggest effect is the relationship with the teacher and the quality of the feedback given to the students, and whether the students themselves have any say in their assessment.
Yeah.
None of these other things, problem-based learning or all those things. And I think you're quite right, that as soon as you're faced with anything that's involves humans, you've got 100,000 variables, whether or not it was a hot wind blowing and the kids have just come back from recess and the taps weren't working. You've got so many things that can affect what's going on in the classroom. So you end up with a lot of ethnographic studies, which a lot of statisticians poo-poo because they're not mathematical and scientific and quantitative. But when we were looking at introducing laptops into our school, we asked teachers, because I think the teachers are the ones who know the kids the best, and they can make judgments about whether or not something is actually assisting the kids or not. And the sort of questions that we asked was not, have the kids got 95% on their spelling now instead of 80% or anything like that. We asked them questions like, what's the relationship between you and the kids like now compared to how it was? What do you think about the autonomy of the student learning? Has that improved? Or comment on that. And I was really, really surprised at the outcome of those surveys, because the teachers could, make those judgments, were more than happy to make those judgments, and it was remarkably consistent across the whole school group. And I think that's, in itself, says something quite interesting. Has anyone else had any experience in measurement along those lines?
Just before you guys jump in there, I'm just going to bring Stuart Walsh in. Stuart was patiently waiting and installing Skype in the background. There you go, it's just calling. Stuart, you there?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
G'day, mate. How are you? Yes, we can hear you fine. How you doing?
Frustrated.
Never mind, you're here now. That's the main thing. Thanks for joining in. Stu, just want to give us a quick hello of where you're from and what you do. And I know you've been keen to be part of the conversation sitting in the back channel there, and you finally got in.
Yes, Stuart Walsh here from Dubbo, New South Wales. Teach at Dubbo College Senior Campus. Teach mainly Year 11 and 12, IT, technology, and the school's digital technology trainer for the teachers. I used Smartboard for the last 3 years, and I've used it to great effect.
Cool. I'm just going to come back to that point that Martin was raising a second ago, and then I might just get you to kick in a bit more insights into your classroom experiences. Does anyone want to just pick up on what Martin was saying there? You just want to refresh our memory, Martin?
Yeah, sure. I guess what I was saying is I was really echoing your points, Chris, and that was that it is very difficult, I think, to get quantitative data. Because people will always say that, you've introduced an educational innovation and the tests aren't measuring what you think has improved. So I was just wondering if anyone else has had the experience that we had, where we asked teachers to evaluate things like the relationships that they have with kids as a result of a technology innovation, about whether the kids' autonomy in learning had changed, about whether or not their dependence on the teacher, similar thing, had changed. And I was amazed at the consistency of the replies and how precise they were, in that everyone seemed to be on the same view, quite happy to make a judgment, and the judgments were remarkably similar. I was wondering if anyone else had any experience along those lines.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Anyone want to add to that?
It's kind of one of those terrible things that has happened over here in the States, where the entire factor of school has to do with how well, or to put it simply, are the test scores going up, 3 percentage points? Unfortunately, administration, that's all they care about. But I think you're right. When you get down into the classroom and you ask the teachers, and you can only really right now, when they first get in, they first start using, you can only get, qualitative answers here. And I think you have to go and trust in those first, because you're asking those to the people who are actually the ones, with the job to help educate, our youth. And when they all say from a, qualitative position that it does make a difference, and I think you need to listen, to the teachers and not worry, at least initially, so much on the quantitative aspect on it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that was something, some of you guys know that along with Mel Lee, I wrote a book about this stuff a while back, and that was something that consistently came up from people when we asked them about it. Those who were actually used it and embedded it into what they did consistently said things like, it makes a difference. I enjoy teaching more. The kids enjoy the experience more. And that was, without fail, a common thread from everybody I spoke to.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an excellent point, Martin, this whole notion of, what do you measure and how do you measure it? And you say you did that study at your school.
Yeah, we did it when we had, we had the trolleys of computers that people could go and borrow. And so everyone was saying we need more of them, so because we can't get them when we need them. And I said, well, it's actually going to be more expensive to get more of them than it is to go one-to-one. And everyone said, oh, that's a big move. And I said, well, let's find out how people feel about it. So that was really the clincher, I think, was a whole bunch of bar charts that all had strongly agree on the right-hand side of the questions that asked, had they made positive differences, and strongly disagree with all the ones that asked if they'd made had detrimental effects.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, though, when you actually introduce them, and we're not talking about one-to-ones here. But I think helping the teachers make those decisions and asking them those questions rather than, have your test scores improved by 3%, as someone was saying earlier on, James, I think, that you're really talking about the relationships. And again, come back to John Hattie's work, that's what has been demonstrated. If you want statistics, the statistics demonstrate that those sorts of things are really important in kids' learning.
Yeah. Stu, you're in the classroom every day with kids. What's your take on that notion of this technology actually being something that makes it a better place to teach in?
Yes, I definitely believe that technology does. I mean, you think that the students nowadays are the digital natives, and it's never so true that they're brought up with all this technology. I'm one of the teachers fighting at school for the mobile phones and iPods to be brought into the classrooms as a learning tool, not something banned, because the kids are relying on those things more and more these days, and they're utilising them to great effect. And I have used them in a classroom with a locked door, mind you, to great effect. As far as interactive whiteboards go, I've left a comment on Chris's blog site, and I don't want to add too much to that debate per se as that particular thing, although I will add to it as I hear things, because that was what I put on Chris's site for everybody to see. So if you want to read that, that's what I think about the whole issue. I think they're a great tool, but they're a tool we use with many other resources that we have, and anything overused becomes the kids don't like it and won't use it. Teaching mainly year 11 and 12, I can't use any two things too much, otherwise they get bored. So I've got a lot of little things that I use, and they never know what I'm going to do from one lesson to the next, and that keeps them happy.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I'd like to. I mean, what you're talking about is bringing in a lot of other technologies that work seamlessly with a tool like the interactive whiteboard, and I think it behooves us to mention the increase in the number of interactive response systems that are going on in the classroom, and how well the interactive whiteboard is a tool that supports that, this new educational tool. And, when kids start bringing in their iTouches and their iPhones, and those start integrating directly with a piece of software that teachers can start assessing, student knowledge there on the spot, as opposed to waiting, 2 days until they grade a test and they're already on another subject matter. I think you have to talk about the interactive whiteboard. Just really, really makes bringing in these tools easy.
Yeah.
And I think the interactive response system is one of those tools that actually will make a quantitative difference on test scores.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about this the other
I'm
day.
not too sure on that.
Sorry, Martin, you go.
Yeah, you go ahead, Chris. I'll come in a minute. I just need to disagree with that.
Okay, no worries. I was just going to say that whenever I talk to people about interactive whiteboards and I give an example of how you might use it, there's always some smart person at the back of the room who wants to say, yes, but look, I could do that with a piece of paper on the wall and some sticky blue tack, or I could do that with flashcards, or I could do that with bits of cardboard on the table and move things around and match and drag and all the rest of it. And all of that is true. Yes, you could show a video using a VCR. Yes, you could show all of these disparate little technologies that you could do that collectively replace the entire experience of having a large screen technology at the front of the room. But it's like the iPhone. It's like, before I got an iPhone, I used to carry around a phone and a iPod and a GPS and a camera and a video camera and everything else. And gradually, more and more of those devices just became subsumed into this one device. And it's not the fact that I've got now one device that used to do the job of 5 and that's just more convenient. It's actually a new class of device. It actually changes the way I do stuff because I've got everything in one place. And what I'm seeing with the whiteboards now is because it's this large screen technology at the front of the room. It's permanently connected to the net. It's often got a scanner attached to it. It can jump out and pull up documents. It can take, images and bring them up. It can get kids interacting with stuff directly. It's that all-in-one place kind of thing about it that actually is the game changer. Not so much that you could do all this any other way, but now you can do it all in one place and it's there all the time. That's kind of been my observation as what's really different about this.
I mean, I'd agree with that, Chris. I mean, that comes back to what we were saying earlier on about the board being a way of just sneaking the IT into the classroom.
Yeah.
So we've got this, basically this hub. This is the whiteboard, but that provides the focus then for all these different things that we can start to do, whether it's the Web 2 tools that we're starting to use, whether it's Google Earth, whether it's the internet, whether it's using your document camera so you can put stuff up on it as well and annotate. And there's all these different things that are coming in, but using the whiteboard and the computer at the front as that hub for all these different things.
Yeah. Martin, you wanted to pick up on something before?
Just well said.
Yeah, well, there are two things, actually. This is a really interesting conversation. I think I want to draw a distinction first between what you said about the iPhone and what you've said about the whiteboard. And people might want to pick me up on this in a minute or so. I think there is a difference. There's a subtle difference between the iPhone and the whiteboard, and I haven't seen this yet in a whiteboard. In the iPhone, it's not just that you've got everything in the one place. It's that you've got the opportunity for things to interact with one another, which creates a situation which didn't exist before. So there's a synergy that happens there because you've got these things that all talk to one another.
Right.
Whereas I haven't seen that in the interactive whiteboard. I know you can do a lot of stuff on it, and, we've done that. But I haven't seen that synergy where the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. And I'd be interested in hearing if anyone has come up with that. But the point that I really wanted to make was I don't agree that these response systems are going to pick up increased students' learning. They may change points on some exams, but everything that I've seen so far has been largely recall. And because most of these things, and I know they're changing, but most of these things have used, the only option you had was multiple guess. Now, some of them are coming up now where you can do some things that are a little bit better, but anyone who's written multiple choice questions to elicit understanding from kids or their understanding of concepts will know that it takes an enormous amount of time to write a good question.
Yeah.
And I don't think teachers are going to do that. I think they're going, and the problem is that they will go back to simply testing facts, which I know will work for the No Child Left Behind approach or No Child Left approach in the US, but I don't think it's going to do anything for learning.
Interesting.
Martin, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rob. Well, I was just going to comment. I think Martin's right.
Hang on, Rob, I'll let you ask your question of Martin.
I'm off. Well, I was going to say, maybe I know that we're always looking for learning, right? I mean, that's what it is. But if interactive whiteboards are maybe is it possible that we're looking for something that's almost maybe unmeasurable. We're looking for the students are becoming more engaged, and I think that's the first step to any type of education is engagement. If they're not listening, they're not going to learn anyway. So I think that we've got engagement. I think that if students can see this, and they can get an appreciation for how things are being used, and if it's being used with multimedia, if it's being used with internet resources and going live on the internet while you're in the classroom looking up things, highlighting text that's right on the internet, hyperlinking all those things, students can become really interested in education again. And maybe that doesn't necessarily say, okay, well, we're measuring learning, but is that maybe the same thing? Like, or is it the next thing to it? Like, if we sort of what am I saying? Instill a love of education again, or an appreciation for, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool. It's cool to learn again. Or maybe I'm talking from the perspective of bringing kids back. But if it's still a love of education, is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know. That's hard, isn't it? I mean, you've got to have them engaged before they'll learn. It's true. You've got to have anyone who's got to be engaged before they'll learn. And if they are learning, they are engaged. I think that's axiomatic. But I guess I was really picking up on the point that I think it was Danny said, then that was that the response systems are going to change things. And admittedly, you said increase the performance on tests, which is not necessarily the same thing. I guess what concerns me is that, and what has concerned me about these things for a long time, is that the teacher can continue to teach in exactly the same way as they always have, which is a good thing because it means that they haven't got as big an activation step to get into it. But it's also a bad thing because we end up with people, doing the same didactic job and measuring very simple learning over the whole thing. So that's what concerns me about the response systems. I don't think they're a panacea. I don't even think they're a Panadol.
James, you wanted to kick in on something there.
Well, once again, your summary, Chris, and Danny's about the smartboard being able to give teachers, first of all, a control of a technology and feel comfortable with all the different things that can be used to help learning. My point was interactive response systems are just a new tool that is very easy to use, that integrates quite well. Now, it's hard to disagree with Martin, but I guess my point would be you can't get around the fact that evaluation is a vital aspect in helping kids learn and knowing what they need to cover. It's just in a classroom setting, you need to. You can be all, fluff. Yes, we want to improve learning. Obviously we do. But you still have to be able to evaluate and judge where your students are, and the ability to know on the fly as opposed to 2 days later, I think brings in a whole new style of learning or teaching, that's very important. Being able to change a lesson on a fly is I think vital, and you can only know when to focus on certain pieces of information when you have that data in hand. And it's not just that they have to develop the questions. You know what? There are all sorts of amazing applications out there that help teachers evaluate. But bringing those into the classroom to use on the fly is not very easy right now. But I just think that the integration of interactive whiteboard, just like everything else, will start making that more commonplace and allow teachers to change their lessons on the fly, which I do think will increase, what the kids know and, quantitatively increase test scores. And I'm sorry to throw in the need to increase test scores, but, guess what? That's an important aspect here in the States with the No Child Left Behind stupid law. It's just terrible. The No Child Left Behind, I think, is hurt learning without question. It's just nuts what teachers do in the classroom to increase test scores by 5 points, and they're taking away kids learning critical, doing critical thinking and all that. There's no doubt about that. So those are just thoughts, just random thoughts.
Random thoughts are good. I'm just going to, as we kind of wind towards, I guess, having to wind this down, if you guys can think of examples maybe, in the book that Mal and I wrote, we use this idea of, you start to use the border initially to do things you've always done. We called it old things and old ways. And then you move gradually into doing some, the old things, but in slightly new ways. And then eventually, hopefully, you start to do new things in new ways. And you start, hopefully, to start using the IWB technology to do things that really weren't feasible or possible or likely using old technology. And I'm just wondering if you guys have got any examples you might be able to throw up here that would be good examples of that, of how you could say to someone, well, here's something I could not do prior to this technology being in my classroom. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you've got anything, be interested to hear what you think.
One I've tried with teachers before is a simple thing where if you're watching a video and you've either got the video from YouTube or you've got the video off different kinds of content servers that schools are buying around here, is that you can use the camera tool inside Smart or Promethean just to take stills as you go through the video.
Yep.
of snapshots of the important moments. And then after the video, you've only shown a 5-minute clip, you've got all those stills on the page, and then it's a case of then talking through. You've got those either for recall, or you could actually do an activity where you sequence them again. Well, what was first? What came next? What came after that?
Yeah.
Or what was happening here? And you've got those images there without having to go backwards and forwards through an old videotape to rewind to this point. You can just use those little snapshots as you go through. And if you're trying to do that without a whiteboard stroke computer, it's a lot harder to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Can I jump in on just follow up with that?
Absolutely.
And just to take that a step further, I think one of the tremendous values about having everything together where it does change is what Danny talks about, and that's being able to take information that's being shared right there and make it available later on for the students. And being able to use the software and the tool to, for instance, make a recording of what you're doing in the classroom, and then literally in about 5 minutes being able to post something onto the internet for your students to be able to access later on at their own choosing, which makes it, empowers them. I think that's a way it does change too.
Yep. Cool. Stuart, I know you're saying there in the back channel, you just trying to figure out how to interrupt here. Just go for it, mate.
Okay, no, I'll just let you go. When I've got something to say, I'll know what to do now.
No worries. Rob, did you have anything, any examples you can think of?
I think that one of the things that really did it for me, that really got me involved, was just how much multimedia I could bring in and how many different resources I could bring into the classroom with it. Plugging it into a sound system, having it connected to iTunes, students could bring their own music in and, plug it in, or their MP3 players. YouTube videos, everything, just having all that. And then at one point, I found out really was great was when we attached the document camera, or what I guess some people call them visualizers, where you attach it to the same I guess most projectors will have 2 inputs. So I could just switch back and forth between sort of having a live camera on the desk and then having the smartboard as well, and all those different functions about it. So I think just having so many resources, and exploring some really more difficult concepts that I might find difficult to sort of express, just with sort of using some more, some earlier technologies. I found that I could express them a lot better with what I had there.
There's a guy in Australia, a guy called Peter Kent, who wrote a book about whiteboards that I thought was a really good overview of ideas and pedagogy. And he gave an example in that book that really struck a chord with me. He had a smart notebook or an active flip chart page, and it had like a picture of a girl, just like a cartoon picture of a girl, and it had the words leg, arms, eyes, nose, ears next to it. And the initial activity was the kids would come out and drag the words onto the girl in the appropriate position. And, I think we all know that that's a pretty low-level activity. It's just simply matching words to something, and it's simple recall. But then he changed the slide slightly, and instead of the words, he actually had the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he said, now I want you to come out and just drag the numbers onto the girl in the order of importance. So the parts of the body that you think are the most important, put a 1 on. And I just thought, wow, that was such a simple thing, but that totally changed it from being a task at the bottom of Bloom's to something up near, well, certainly towards the top, because now you're having to think and synthesize and wonder about, balance things against each other and go, well, the eye's more important than the arms. What if, do I need my ears more than my mouth? Something as simple as that, but what it did was it pushed the conversation away from what was happening on the board and back out into the kids again. And the kids were then arguing about, no, eyes are more important than mouths, and that sort of thing. And I just found that a really powerful example. So, again, I don't necessarily know that you couldn't have done that any other way, but it's that kind of thinking about using, whether it's drag and drop or multimedia or some form of, quote, interactivity, to bring the interactivity out into more of a discussion or a conversation or an argument even with the kids, to have to defend their point of view. And that's where I see the huge power of these things. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt so much. Martin, did you want to give an example?
I think it's what a lot of the commercial people have picked up on, and I get back to this gesticulation thing, and how that enhances the communication between the person between anyone, I suppose, because we all gesticulate when we talk, and I think a lot of that communication that's non-verbal is really important. And when you are dealing with that in the same way as a teacher will use an ordinary whiteboard, they will be able to point to things they don't have to say, look at this, they just point and it's there, because all of that non-verbal communication is there. And being able to expand things, to focus concentration on a specific area, magnify things, I think that's probably one of the most powerful things that I've experienced with it.
Good point. Stu, did you want to throw an example in as we wind this up?
Yes, no, having used IWBs for a good 3 years now, I was there when the college sold some land in every classroom in our college got an IWB. There was a lot of how do I use it type thing that went on. And I was an early adopter before they thought a technology classroom wouldn't need a IWB, strange thinking, but I had an overhead projector and used the software and everything beforehand, could see the power in it. Being an early adopter of Google, blogs, wikis, all sorts of media-rich podcasts, all that sort of thing, I found the IWB to be an extension of that and a usable tool to put those other things onto. And as Chris has already said, it has connectivity to the internet and other parts. Also, Smartboard software has a recording capability, which I've used to great effect, and many other things. Now, yes, it does lend itself more interactively to the junior classes in the college, but it also, if used correctly, can be used interactively with the senior students, I've found. They do have their place, but like I said, everything else still has their place. I still use an overhead occasionally. I'll switch the machine on and put the clear plastic in.
Really?
Still use the whiteboard pen on the old whiteboard. Still use the IWB. All those things, as I said before, you've got to use the whole lot to be interactive in a classroom. It's not just the IWB being interactive. I've had my piece. Thanks.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
No spirit duplicator, Stu. I'm disappointed.
All right, well, gentlemen, I will wrap this up because otherwise we could be here all night or all morning or wherever it is in your time zone. But I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us. I think it's been interesting. I think we've covered some interesting ground. So I'm just going to go through and I'll start at the bottom of the list this time. James, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you on the web?
People can read my Smartboard blog called Teachers Love Smartboards, and they can also find me at Teacher Online Training, which is an online learning platform for teachers to learn how to use the Smart Notebook software.
And I have had a look through that's on the Moodle course you did, right? I had a look through that. It's excellent. There's some really good stuff on there. So, yes, highly recommended. Danny, where can people find you on the web? You
can find me on my blog, which is whiteboardblog.co.uk, and my thoughts and ramblings are normally fired off onto Twitter as well. That's Danny Nick on Twitter.
Perfect. No worries. And James and Danny, you guys are fortunate enough. You're heading off to Canada next year for that conference that I can't go to. It's very sad.
We are indeed, yes. Looking for... They'll take my woolly hat.
You need it. Rob, where can people find you on the web?
You can follow me. I'm on Twitter. That's Rob in Thailand. I have a blog, but I've been debating which one to go with yet. WordPress or Posterous is really exciting these days too. So
Posterous is interesting.
and usually slumming around YouTube.
Cool. No worries. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. My surname is Levins, Levins, and you can get me as martin.levins.net, and all the other stuff will sit on there.
Excellent. Yeah.
So thanks again, Chris.
No worries.
It's very enjoyable.
Excellent. Pleasure. And Stu?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys are very welcome. Thank you. Stu, where can we find you on the web?
Yes, mainly on Twitter, and it's Smokey_Stew. And I'm just getting blog sites and everything set up now because I've changed over my internet providers. So I'll post it on your blog site if you like, Chris.
Yeah, no worries, mate. That'd be fantastic. I will put show notes to the podcast on the site at virtualstaffroom.net, and I'll put all those links in here. But guys, thanks again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll catch up soon. Cheers. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. And as I mentioned in that episode, here's my chance to get a free plug. A fellow called Mal Lee and myself, we wrote a book recently about interactive whiteboards. In fact, this all stemmed from my own really kind of personal investigation into whiteboards and whether they were good or bad. And anyway, it ended up being a whole book, and it got published by Australian Council for Educational Research. And if you're interested, it is called The Interactive Whiteboard Revolution, Teaching with Interactive Whiteboards, and it's available through Acer Press. Along with the book, we actually set up a Ning community where people could come along and either discuss what they'd read in the book or simply just come along and talk about issues to do with interactive whiteboards. And that community has actually grown to nearly 800 members now. It's far exceeded my initial expectations. But if you are interested in that kind of thing, the IWB Revolution at iwbrevolution.com isn't a bad place to come and engage in some discussions about what this technology is all about, and particularly from a real teaching perspective. We're not there to talk about the technical stuff or the sales stuff. In fact, that's kind of almost frowned upon. Well, it is frowned upon. So if you just want to talk about it from a pedagogical and teaching and how can it make learning better, it's not a bad place to have a conversation. You're welcome to come over there. As always, virtualstaffroom.net for links and show notes and whatnot for this episode. So pop over there and you can connect with all the guys who were on this episode. And we will try and get that debate happening. I still think that debate's worthwhile as an idea. So if we can make that happen, we will at some point in the future. Till next time, keep smiling. My name's Chris Betcher. You've been listening to the Virtual Staff Room.